I sat in front of the full-length mirror, watching as the makeup artist applied the finishing touches. The morning sun streaming through the bridal suite window at the Drake Hotel softly illuminated my pure white wedding dress hanging on its special hanger. The intricate lace patterns caught the light, shimmering like angel wings. I had imagined this special day countless times, but the nerves I felt now were beyond anything I'd anticipated. "Grace, lift your chin a bit," the makeup artist instructed. I sighed deeply as I followed her direction. How hard I'd worked to reach this day: night shifts as a pediatrician, emergency surgeries, working holidays. Still, I'd overcome it all for this moment. Mother stood beside me, meticulously smoothing out tiny wrinkles in the dress. Her movements reflected the perfectionism she'd cultivated over her 62 years. My sister Rachel sat on the window-side sofa, frequently checking her smartphone. She seemed somewhat restless. Her flashy blonde hair caught the sunlight, creating a striking profile that could have belonged to a model. "Rachel, are you all right?" "Huh? Oh, I'm totally fine." Her dismissive response gave me an uneasy feeling. But Mother didn't seem to notice, absorbed in discussions with the hairstylist. She had always accepted Rachel's emotional ups and downs as youthful personality traits. The Anderson family was known for generations of physicians. Since my great-grandfather's time in Chicago, we'd maintained a medical practice, and Father had achieved success as chief of surgery at a general hospital, performing numerous difficult operations. He maintained strict educational standards, being particularly demanding of me, his eldest daughter. Even on holidays, reading medical textbooks was routine, and time with friends was limited. In contrast, Mother was lenient with Rachel. I was often told, "She's your younger sister," and despite feeling the unfairness, I continued to look after her. The day I received my medical school acceptance letter, Father, unusually emotional, had tears in his eyes. Rachel, however, became sullen, shouting, "It's always about Big Sister," before locking herself in her room. Perhaps that's when something began to twist inside my sister. Years later, I met Michael. It was in a conference room at Chicago Children's Hospital. I still vividly remember the day we first met over a medical malpractice consultation. The atmosphere in the room seemed to shift when his 6-foot frame entered. "Dr. Anderson, if you could review these documents." "Yes, Mr. Crawford." Weekly meetings continued, and we had chance encounters at cafes. I gradually found myself drawn to his depth of knowledge, cultivated at Princeton and the University of Chicago. Then came our first dinner date. At a small Italian restaurant in Chicago's River North, he smiled sheepishly. A doctor and a lawyer, an unexpected combination, isn't it? But both professions help people. Those words touched my heart. His sincere gaze and gentle smile, his honest and thoughtful nature. I instinctively felt he was the one. It was something beyond his position as a medical malpractice attorney. I was drawn to him as a person. I returned my gaze to my reflection in the mirror. My shoulder-length chestnut hair fell in elegant waves, my makeup was perfectly done, and the tiara Mother had chosen cast a soft glow. The ceremony was about to begin. But I couldn't shake my concern about my sister's behavior. She kept checking her phone and sighing, fidgeting restlessly. Rachel? Are you really okay? I'm fine, don't worry. Today is your special day, isn't it? Something lurked behind those words. The hollow response and unnatural smile. I desperately suppressed the anxiety spreading in my chest. Today was my special day. Everything would be fine. I wanted to believe that. The heavy doors of St. Patrick's Church opened, and the majestic sound of the pipe organ filled the air. The Gothic-style church, with over a century of history, seemed to radiate a special brilliance today. A crimson carpet stretched in a straight line toward the altar. White wooden pews on either side seated 200 guests with solemn expressions, medical colleagues, legal luminaries, social elite. The weight of their gazes felt like a burden on my shoulders. Pure white roses and baby's breath adorned the altar lavishly, and light streaming through the 20-meter stained glass windows cast rainbow shadows on the floor. The stained glass, crafted in 1912, vividly depicted the Virgin Mary's compassionate expression. When we finished the final check in the bridal waiting room, Father offered me his right arm. At that moment, I felt my heart pound heavily. His arm was both strong and delicate, like a testament to the thousands of surgeries he'd performed as a surgeon. Through my veil, the scene before me felt like a dream. At the end of the aisle stood Michael. In his deep navy tuxedo, he looked like he'd stepped out of a movie scene. His proud expression slightly eased my tension. Mother smiled in the front row. In her emerald green dress, she looked too elegant to be 62. Next to her, Rachel, in contrast to her earlier restlessness, now wore a perfect smile. Her champagne gold bridesmaid dress enhanced her beauty even more. But her hands were trembling slightly. "Dad," I whispered, and he nodded gently. My father, always strict as both a doctor and surgical chief, had tears in his eyes today. His profile reminded me of the day he first learned of my medical school acceptance. To the organ's melody, we began our slow walk. Mendelssohn's Wedding March echoed through this church, built in 1846. Feeling the guests' gazes, I took each step forward into my new life. Before the priest, Michael and I exchanged our vows. Our hands, placed on the Bible, felt each other's warmth. I vow to love, honor, and cherish you. Michael's voice trembled slightly, unlike his usual confident courtroom manner. I vow to love, honor, and cherish you. My response was met with warm applause throughout the church. Through my veil, I could see Mother wiping away tears in the front row. After the ceremony, in the limousine heading to the Drake Hotel, Michael gently held my hand. Outside the window, Chicago's cityscape gleamed in the May sunlight. As we drove north on Michigan Avenue, we savored the anticipation of our new life together. We're really married now. Yes, it's the perfect day. In the back seat, Rachel was again staring at her phone. I couldn't help feeling uneasy watching her fingers dance across the screen. What was she messaging, and with whom? The Gold Coast Room on the top floor of the Drake Hotel, established in 1920, was decorated lavishly in gold and white, true to its name. Crystal chandeliers cast light like stardust from the ceiling. 20 round tables each seated 10 guests, with white rose and hydrangea centerpieces creating an elegant atmosphere. The pure white tablecloths gleamed, the perfectly arranged tableware, and rows of premium champagne, everything was perfect. As staff finished serving the main lobster salad, Father stood for the toast. The room fell silent. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm proud to have raised Grace to become an excellent physician. Since childhood, she has found joy in helping others. I couldn't be happier that she has found Michael, who shares her dedication to serving others. It happened just as the mushroom bisque was being served. Suddenly, Rachel stood up unsteadily. She clutched a champagne glass in her trembling hand. Her cheeks were unnaturally flushed, her eyes fixed. May I say something too? After forcefully taking the microphone from a staff member, Rachel displayed a defiant smile. In that moment, a chill ran down my spine. Instinctively, I sensed something terrible was about to happen. Hello everyone, I'm Rachel, the sister. She laughed brightly. An unnatural, painful laugh. Behind her perfect social media influencer smile with 50,000 followers, an unusual tension lurked. Today, our beloved sister married a wonderful man. But everyone, we forgot to introduce tonight's waitstaff. The room fell silent. Even the chandelier light seemed frozen in that moment. It's perfect practice for being a bride, isn't it? After all, that's the only kind of work suitable for Big Sister, right? Frozen air. Confused expressions from the guests. Father's voice, Rachel. Mother's pale face. Angry expressions from the bridesmaids could be seen throughout the room. That's when Michael slowly stood up. With quiet movements but somehow emanating authority, he took out his smartphone. The same cool, determined expression he wore in court as a medical malpractice attorney. He nodded to the staff, and a large screen descended at the front of the room. Then let me make a surprise announcement for my sister-in-law. At those words, Rachel froze. The color drained from her face. Her champagne gold dress reflected light as if mirroring her fear. The guests watched with interest to see what would unfold. My heart began to pound fiercely. I could guess what was about to happen. And I knew it wouldn't be an easy development. The projector's startup sound echoed through the silent room. The lights dimmed. The Drake Hotel's Gold Coast room took on the atmosphere of a luxury movie theater. The crystal chandeliers were dimmed to minimum, their faint glow illuminating the tense expressions of the guests. Michael maintained perfect posture as he stood. His usual gentleness had vanished from his expression, replaced by the sharp gaze he showed in court. His fingers moved across his smartphone with the precision of a pianist. Actually, throughout our wedding preparations, Rachel has been making inappropriate advances toward me. As those words were spoken, soft gasps could be heard around the room. Mother covered her mouth with both hands, and Father closed his eyes tightly. I've kept all the evidence, which I'd like to share. Michael's voice carried a professional resonance, completely controlled and devoid of emotion. The first image appeared on the screen. It was a social media direct message screen. The first message. Don't you think I'm more attractive than my sister? Sent at 2 a.m. The next message. Want to meet secretly? I won't tell anyone. That was the night of our engagement announcement. And then, big sister would never understand me. A message from 1 month before the wedding. With each screen change, more color drained from Rachel's face. The champagne gold dress now only served to highlight her trembling body. Even more shocking evidence followed. Inappropriate selfies sent late at night. Provocative poses with captions like, "What do you think of me like this?" When that photo appeared, Mother let out a small cry. Michael's responses to all of these. This is inappropriate. Please refrain from such contact. I will never betray Grace. If this continues, I will have to take legal action. His responses were consistently calm and professional. They served both as warnings to her and as evidence to protect himself. Each time, I saved these messages and photos, and reported them to Grace. At Michael's words, the guest's attention turned to me. I nodded quietly. However, for the sake of family peace, Grace didn't want to make this public. Until the end, she believed in her sister. Those words seemed to break Rachel's last defense. No. That's not true. She suddenly stood up and screamed. Her voice no longer belonged to the social media influencer known as a society darling. It was the voice of the little girl who used to cry out in jealousy over my successes. It's all lies. All of it. Her words trailed off as she collapsed to the floor. Her luxurious bridesmaid dress spread out like flower petals. I hate you, big sister. The room held its breath at this sudden confession. Always perfect, always loved by everyone. I was always in the shadow. With makeup running down her tear-stained face, Rachel screamed. Just this one person. I wanted to steal just this one person. Her confession continued like years of festering wounds bursting open at once. Jealousy from childhood. The humiliation of my medical school acceptance. And her twisted obsession with my fiancé. The room was enveloped in complete silence. 200 guests stood frozen. The chandelier light continued to softly illuminate the scene. The guests' expressions mixed shock with sympathy. Medical colleagues wore expressions suggesting professional insight, while legal professionals showed stern faces understanding the legal gravity of the situation. Our parents' reactions were as contrasting as two different tragedies. Father struggled to maintain the composure of his years as a surgeon, but his hands trembled slightly. Mother repeatedly apologized while covering her face with a handkerchief. Our way of raising them, we're so sorry, truly sorry. The bridesmaids showed mixed expressions of anger and sympathy, seeming unsure how to react. The wedding's celebratory atmosphere had completely vanished. My voice broke the hellish silence. I slowly stood up, my wedding dress rustling quietly. Parents, Michael, and Rachel all watched intently, holding their breath. Rachel, let's end this. My voice rang out more calmly than I expected. My experience as a pediatrician, maintaining composure in countless difficult situations, supported me. I've always watched over you because you're my sister. But I cannot forgive what happened today. I delivered each word clearly. This is your final warning. Never approach us again. Those words echoed through the heavy air. Rachel collapsed onto the sofa as if all strength had left her. Mother began crying anew, and Father heaved a deep sigh. Michael stood quietly beside me, his presence giving me great strength. His gentle eyes held deep love for me and support for this decision. We said our goodbyes there. Even a final glance at Rachel wasn't necessary anymore. At 4 p.m., we returned to the Gold Coast room. The atmosphere had already changed significantly. Warm applause welcomed us, and the guests' expressions showed understanding and encouragement. Our elegant first dance began. As Etta James's At Last started playing, Michael gently led me. We'll overcome everything together from now on. I smiled and answered his words. Yes, I'll be fine with you. As closing time approached, our parents made modest farewell greetings, and the final family photos were taken without Rachel. Those photos seemed to be missing something important, or perhaps freed from something unnecessary. Guests approached us one after another with words of support. You handled that beautifully. True happiness starts now. Finally, a pure white limousine awaited us. Walking through the shower of rice, I was certain. What we lost today was significant. But what we would gain from now on would be even greater. Before our honeymoon to Maui, we held hands as we entered the limousine. A quiet residential area in Chicago's suburbs. Spring flowers bloomed in the garden surrounded by white picket fences. Sunday morning sunlight pleasantly filtered through the kitchen counter. It was approaching 1 year since our wedding. Our first anniversary is coming up soon. I gazed at the flower bed outside while brewing coffee. Tulips and sweet peas swayed in the wind like a celebratory dance. Time has flown by. Michael looked up from his newspaper and smiled gently. On weekend mornings, his expression was always softer. No trace remained of his sharp courtroom gaze, just the gentle face of a husband. Over breakfast, we discussed our future plans, having children someday, career prospects, renovation plans for the new house. This ordinary happiness had become our daily life over the past year. Our relationship with my parents had gradually changed too. Monthly Sunday dinners at their house had become tradition. Father had retired from surgery and now taught at a university, mentoring the next generation. His expression had lost its professional tension, regaining softness. It makes me happy to see you both so content. Father always says this with slight embarrassment. Mother had changed too. Perhaps reflecting on how she had spoiled my sister, she now worked to build a more equal relationship. We're learning from our mistakes. Her words carried deep meaning. Rachel had moved to San Diego, California. She had drastically reduced her interior design work and made her social media accounts private. She seemed to be living a quiet life, the opposite of her former flashy lifestyle. I heard she had started seeing a psychologist. Through therapy, She was examining her self-centered nature and gradually changing. She had begun participating in local volunteer activities, learning for the first time to spend time for someone other than herself. Then, on Christmas morning, a letter arrived. Dear sister, I sincerely apologize for what happened that day. My actions were unforgivable. Through counseling, I've been confronting the twisted parts within myself, and I think I'm slowly changing. If possible, someday, as family. Her trembling hand could be felt in the handwritten letters. Signs of multiple rewrites remained on the paper. I sat on the sofa by the fireplace, reading that letter over and over. Complex emotions swirled in my chest. Hatred, love, nostalgia, anxiety. All these feelings merged into one, creating a whirlpool inside me. A new family photo adorned the mantelpiece. Our parents, Michael and me. While Rachel wasn't in the picture, her letter sat beside the frame. Outside the window, large snowflakes had begun falling quietly. Michael gently embraced my shoulders as the fireplace flames flickered softly. Time can heal some things, can't it? He nodded quietly at my words. Like flowers blooming in spring, perhaps wounded hearts can also sprout new buds. Though it's not yet time, someday, surely. The Chicago winter night deepened. The snow continued to fall gently, quietly blanketing our new home's garden in white. It was as if new pages were being added to our future.